Been too long. We love talking to Megyn Kelly, our mate in the United States, and she's all female, the OG, the real thing, sun's out, guns out. It's summer in the US, and summer never looks as good as Megyn Kelly. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good. Always here just to pump your tyres, mate.
I
Sure, we'll
appreciate
talk
it.
about news, but, I'll do my best here. So, tomorrow in the United States, our time, we're going to have the first Republican debate. But the reality is that everyone on the stage is playing for second. None of them have a chance of beating Trump, and Trump is going to sit it out. You, of course, famously 8 years ago were there with his first debate performance that really sort of rocketed him as the one who was going to throw spanners in the works. So what does a Trumpless debate mean when the polls are so definite that he's leading?
Womp womp. It's going to go back to the debates. I mean, I've anchored 5 of these things, and I've done them without Trump in the preceding cycles, and they're always exciting somewhat. It's exciting just to see him up there and be able to ask them questions, and especially if they start sparring with one another. So I think that we will find some satisfaction in the exchanges that happen, and it'll feel like 2012. And that was fine. We used to look forward to debates then. We generally weren't getting 25 million people watching them, which is what Trump delivered. And I think probably they won't have those numbers, although one never knows because Trump's still in the race and they'll be talking about Trump a lot. But it won't be anything like what it would have been had he shown up. And I do think that Trump may indeed start showing up at these. What he has said so far, and on his Truth Social post, he said, I'm not going to do the debates. But then NBC followed up with him and reported that someone on his team clarified he means the first 2. And that was pretty clear. He's been saying, I'm not going to do the Fox News debate or the Fox Business debate. I don't think they've earned it. But I think it's partly that. And it's also that it's early enough in the cycle that things could change if somebody landed a big blow on him on the stage. And he'd like to avoid that. And if he waits until the 3rd or the 4th debate to show up, now we're in November. Now we're, 6 weeks away from the first vote. And maybe they could chip away at his 46 percentage point lead, but it's not going to go so far from November to the beginning of January that he's going to lose, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and so on. So I think that's my guess on what his calculation is.
Well, what I find, and I'm going to use an Australian term here, but what I find so particularly piss weak about the Republican Party and the Democrat Party is the entire infrastructure of getting your name on the ballot, the fundraising, a lot of the machinery of running for president is, of course, associated with the political party. Now, this is an official political party event. How has the Republican Party not created a rule that says if you don't turn up to official events, then you don't qualify to even be our nominee? How did they get themselves into a position where he's able to become the nominee, use all of their resources, demand all of their loyalty, but he doesn't show any of it back to the one half of the ticket that means he's on the ballot in 50 states?
You misunderstand who is in control of the Republican Party. It is not the RNC. It's Donald Trump. He is the last sitting Republican president. He only had the 1 term and therefore is eligible for a second term. And he's been the standard bearer now for since 2015, really. Since 2015, he's been the Republican standard bearer. He controls them, not the other way around. And if Trump says he's not going, he's not going. I mean, already you have him trying to sort of bully his way into the spin room with his surrogates, which the RNC didn't want. And there's a question about whether that's going to be allowed or not allowed. But they're going to fold to his will because A, he is the party leader, but B, he is a ratings machine. And the RNC, more than anything, wants eyeballs because they want voters, because they want to win. And if Trump can deliver that, that's a huge source of power. And so they will humble themselves and do what he wants.
Now, it's been interesting watching the media either search around for the candidate alternative to Trump that they want to back or the scorched earth policy that all Republicans are terrible. Remember when, of course, John McCain was the worst thing in the world until he, of course, turned on Trump, and Mitt Romney was the binders full of women guy, and then he turned on Trump, and then he became sort of a CNN favourite. I mean, we know how this game works. They've been going at Ron DeSantis for a while. They're starting to move into Vivek now because I think he's going to have a little bit of a run. But I loved that a bloke who is a supporter of DeSantis was able to basically pull CNN's pants down live on the air as they were trying to misrepresent what he was saying.
It was interesting. I mean, it's funny because CNN misrepresented it, and of course, the Trump supporters, some of them ran with it. Jason Miller, who's on the Trump campaign, tweeted out immediately saying, "Oh, this is this Hillary's basket of deplorables moment." I think that's unfair to Ron DeSantis, though I will say it's not clear. His answer was so muddled; it's a little unclear. But you, as the news anchor, don't get to make that call. You should not set it up as CNN did by saying you ripped on Trump supporters. And Ken Cuccinelli was sitting there, who's a surrogate for DeSantis, saying, "That's a lie. That's not what he says in this clip." And if you listen to the full clip, which CNN did not play, which almost no one has played, we played it, but almost no one has played it. DeSantis was asked, some people say you're a rhino, Republican in name only. Why do you think they think that? And he winds up to the moment that got played everywhere by saying, it's kind of BS, is essentially what he says. You can have the most conservative members of Congress, and they'll call them rhinos despite this amazingly conservative voting record because they're not totally pro-Trump. Maybe they've endorsed me. Then you can have these left-wing Republicans who have voted with the Democrats more than with the Republicans, but because they back Trump, they're not rhinos. So he was making the point that these congressmen are getting the wrong labels, and so is he, and that they're basing that term just all on whether you support Trump or not. And so it's kind of lost its meaning. And in that context, he then said, look, we can't just be a bunch of listless vessels that determine our policies based on what we see on Truth Social that morning. And he is saying, I was not talking about voters. I was talking about those members of Congress who don't seem to be rooted in principle, but seem, despite the fact that they're technically Republicans, to go along with whatever Trump says, even if it's not particularly conservative. Now, that's a long-winded explanation of what actually happened, but it's what actually happened. And, the media and, of course, Trump supporters who hate DeSantis for now would love to just use it to bash him. I think it's our job in the press to be more considered and more careful than that. CNN, as usual, failed.